"Dad, I'm sorry, but you're not invited." Ava's voice, my only daughter, rang out in the lavish wedding hall, light as mist but colder than steel. The entire ironwood hall went dead silent. Crystal lights reflected off champagne flutes, and I, the father who'd spent my whole life raising her, stood frozen at the threshold, still holding the gift box I'd wrapped in silver paper myself. I heard someone chuckle, then the rustle of the wedding dress as she stepped back, afraid my presence would embarrass the groom's family. I said nothing, no begging, no groveling. I simply bowed my head and walked out of that gold-plated hall, the place paid for by the years I skipped meals and sleep on job sites. And as the door clicked shut, I pulled out my phone. In 2 hours, my daughter's dream wedding would collapse exactly the way she had denied her father. If you're still here, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more hearts, and if it moved you, give it a like so others can find it too. My name is Calvin Mercer, 68 years old, owner of a small construction company in Spokane, Washington. For 30 years, I've never been late paying a single worker, and I've never missed my daughter's tuition by a day. Today, I came to Ava's wedding, the only child I had left after my wife, Lydia, passed away. I put on the best suit I own, polished my leather shoes, and brought a simple gift, a family silver pocket watch, the one Lydia told me to give our daughter on the most special day of her life. I thought it would be a happy day. But the moment I stepped into the hall, I knew I was wrong. The air wasn't joy. It was calculated showmanship. Men in glossy black tuxedos discussed stocks and real estate. Women in pearls smiled behind champagne, looking at me, a weathered old man with sun-browned skin and calloused hands, like I'd wandered into the wrong world. Then the groom, Graham Hastings, appeared. Polished, neatly combed hair, a thin smile, and a cold gaze. "Mr. Mercer," Graham said with a hint of pity, "we're very grateful for everything, and you've contributed, but this ceremony is for close family only. I hope you understand. Close family. I raised my daughter alone, woke up at 5 a.m. every day, drove her to school, paid for every dance class and every college bill, and now I'm not family?" I held back a laugh. All I could see was Lydia, the woman who once said, "Let her live well, but don't let her forget where she came from." Maybe I failed at the second half of that promise. Ava looked at me, both embarrassed and confused. She shook her head slightly, as if I were an uninvited guest. I saw it clearly in her eyes. She was afraid that I, with my cheap suit and sun-browned face, would stain the perfect Hastings wedding picture. I was about to say something, but no, it wouldn't help. I just nodded, kept a thin smile. "I understand." I turned and left. My work boots, the kind I've worn for 30 years on job sites, knocked hard against the shining marble floor. I heard someone snicker behind me. A server stepped aside, afraid to bump into the country old man just kicked out of the party. At the door, I took a deep breath. The expensive perfume and jazz faded behind me. I stepped through the glass doors, leaving behind a wedding built with money but not a speck of gratitude. I walked slowly across the wide parking lot, where rows of shiny black supercars reflected the late afternoon sun. My old Ford F-150 sat tucked in a far corner, its silver paint dulled by job site dust. I set the gift box on the passenger seat and sat in the driver's seat for a long time. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I just felt empty. But that emptiness quickly filled with a decision that was clear and cold. I took out my phone, opened my contacts. My finger stopped at the name Denise Park, the business account manager at Northwest Meridian Bank. I called. "Hello, Mr. Mercer," her voice came through. "How can I help you today?" "I need to verify authorization, codes for special transactions," I said, calm. "I want to stop all payments related to my daughter's event immediately." She hesitated. "You want to cancel everything?" "Including the venue, catering, photography, sound and lighting, flowers, all of it. And I need written confirmation right away. I'll cover any cancellation fees. I heard typing on the other end. Yes, Mr. Mercer. I'll send you a stop payment confirmation within 5 minutes. Would you like us to notify the vendors? I'll handle it, I said. I opened my notebook and wrote a quick list. Cascade Catering, Catering Company. Orchid and Vine Floral, Flowers and Decor. Blue Note Quartet, Live Band. Lumina Photography, Photography Team. Vector Light and Sound, Sound and Lighting. I called each one by one. Every time a representative answered, I introduced myself, gave the transaction codes, and notified them that payment authorization had been revoked. A few people froze and asked, "Are you sure? The event is in progress." "I'm very sure," I answered. "And I suggest you recover your equipment and goods if you want to preserve value. The contract allows it." The last call ended at 4:32 p.m. I looked at the dash clock. Still in time before the bank closed. I leaned back and exhaled. Spring air drifted in through the window crack, carrying the smell of damp earth and sap, something I know better than any fancy perfume in that hall. No, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt fair. I spent half a lifetime building my daughter's future so she could hold her head high. Turns out that sacrifice made her hold it so high she couldn't see her father anymore. And sometimes, only a stop payment reminds people who actually paid for their dream. I started the truck, the old tires rolling slowly over concrete. The last light of the day flashed across the windshield, reflecting my face in the mirror. Tired but steady. I knew that in just 2 hours, Ironwood Hall would witness something no one expected. And maybe, for the first time in her life, my daughter would understand the real value of gratitude. I tightened my grip on the wheel and said quietly to myself, "This isn't revenge, Calvin. This is the bill for love." Around close to 5 p.m., Spokane's sunset started casting orange-gold light across Ironwood Hall's glass windows. From a distance, I could still see sparkles shining from inside the very place where, just hours earlier, I stood and was thrown out of my own daughter's wedding. I parked across the street, behind a row of young maple trees. I didn't plan to leave yet. Something in me wanted to close this chapter properly. When the clock flipped to 5:08 p.m., the chain reaction began. A small truck with orchid and vine floral pulled up at the side gate. 3 women in beige uniforms rolled in large plastic bins. At first, some guests thought they were bringing more flowers. Then they started removing white orchid arrangements, bundling them with plastic ties, and loading them into bins. The wedding arch Ava had picked each stem imported from Ecuador. The flowers I once drove 300 miles to sign a delivery contract for the right season now showed empty gaps. Whispers spread across the hall. A woman murmured, "Are they taking the flowers down?" The MC stumbled mid-intro, eyes darting for a coordinator. A few guests lifted their phones. Flashes popped. I saw Ava from afar, still in her ivory crystal-studded gown, rushing to the main doors. She stopped in front of the woman holding Orchid and Vine's inventory sheet, her voice trembling but trying to stay composed. "Excuse me, what's going on? Who authorized you to remove the flowers?" The woman looked up, polite but firm. "Mrs. Hastings, we received official notice from the bank at 4:15. Payment for contract number 77290 was canceled, so under Clause 5.2, we need to recover assets to protect contract value." Ava froze. I saw her lips tremble. Graham stepped in, face flushed. "This is our wedding. You can't do that. I'll pay cash, right now." He pulled out his wallet, flashed a credit card. The staff shook her head. "I'm sorry. We only act under the signed contract with Calvin Mercer, the account holder. A new transaction requires a different process and bank approval." Graham gritted his teeth and dialed. I figured he was calling a banker or a family contact. Seconds later, he slammed his phone on the buffet table and hissed at Ava. Card declined. They said the authorization code was pulled. The hall froze. Eyes glanced around. Whispers grew. What's happening? Did they run out of money? No way. I saw Cascade Catering, the company Ava insisted on because only they meet Michelin standards, start covering the buffet line with white cloths. I manager walked the stations, giving quiet orders. Pause service. Recover equipment. Follow suspension protocol. It felt like an orchestra cut mid-movement. The clink of spoons, plates, and steel pans sounded harsh. The last whiff of roast and sauce faded into heavy air. Next, Blue Note Quartet, the jazz band, was playing Fly Me to the Moon. The vocal cut when the tech signaled a stop. A small pop came as the cable unplugged. Stage lights dimmed. The hall sank into a warm, dull amber. No more sparkle. In the middle of it all, Ava stood gripping her bouquet, eyes wide and fixed. I watched her try to steady herself, take a breath, then look at Graham. Say something to them. This is my wedding. You think I haven't tried? Graham snapped. Every payment is under your dad's name. What do you expect me to do now? Ironwood Hall's manager stepped forward, courteous but cold. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Hastings. We've received notice from the bank that venue payments have not been reauthorized. Per policy, we must suspend operations until payment is confirmed. No music, no clinking glasses. Only the rustle of a wedding dress as Ava moved through a sea of murmurs. In a corner, someone started a live stream. The phone screen caught the bride's panic, the groom's twisted smile, and staff taking down decor. Comments popped up. Oh my gosh, a 5-star wedding shut down mid-event. Who's the bride's dad? Heard her dad paid for everything. I stayed in my truck, watching through the glass. Now and then a breeze rattled the leaves, blurring the hall's yellow glow. I saw orchid and vine staff carefully carrying out each bouquet, each expensive glass vase. The very pieces Ava had bragged online were specially imported from Italy. With each arrangement removed, it felt like peeling off another layer of illusion my daughter had worn for years. Graham ran outside, phone glued to his ear. I figured he was begging his father, Richard Hastings, a shareholder in a large financial group. I pictured the other end, a cold voice asking, "You married into what kind of family that can't even pay for their own wedding reception?" The glass doors reflected Graham's red face, sweat beading on his forehead. He turned back and yelled at Ava, but the noise swallowed the words. I couldn't hear, only saw my daughter's helpless smile, the tight smile of someone who doesn't understand, only knows she's becoming tonight's joke. I wasn't happy, not a bit. I only felt a knot loosening that had been choking me for 15 years. My phone vibrated. Ava calling. I looked at her name and let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times, I let it go. Then it rang again. On the 4th call, I still didn't answer. I wanted her to feel the full weight of consequence, the weight of what she'd dismissed for too long. Inside, Cascade Catering's crew was packing up. Food trays were covered. Steel carts rolled away. The MC stumbled. Ladies and gentlemen, please give us a moment. We're having a small technical issue. No one believed it, people whispered, then started heading out. I remembered details Ava had bragged about during planning. Dad, my wedding will be different. Everything has to be perfect. I deserve it. And I nodded, never objecting, even though that bill should have been split between 2 families. I paid for all of it only to watch perfect pop like a soap bubble. I checked the time. 5:43 p.m., just over an hour since I left the hall. Everything had fallen apart cleanly without me lifting another finger. Another truck pulled in, Lumina Photography logo big on the door. 2 young men hopped out, popped the hatch, grabbed gear. I saw them talk to the manager, then start pulling memory cards, folding tripods, boxing lenses. A breeze tossed the entry curtain. Inside, the bride hunched over a table, head down. I leaned back and closed my eyes. In the wind, I heard Lydia's voice somewhere in memory. If she ever forgets the value of labor, you remind her, whatever it takes. When I opened my eyes, the sky was warm gold. Orchid and Vine's truck pulled away, leaving a bare arch. Cascade was gone. The band vanished. Ironwood Hall, bright and buzzing earlier, now looked like a dark church after service. My phone lit again, Ava calling, the sixth time. I let it ring, then turned the screen off. Not because I hated her, but because some lessons only sink in when a person is forced to sit in silence and face herself. I started the engine and turned the truck. In the rear view, Ironwood Hall's lights faded, leaving small, tangled silhouettes in the dusk. I said quietly, "No one learns from lectures. Sometimes things have to collapse before people start listening." I pressed the gas, leaving behind a ruined party and a lesson just beginning. I drove away from Ironwood Hall, evening shadows sliding across the windshield like dark velvet. Spokane was still noisy, but inside I felt empty. My hands on the wheel were stiff as wood. Everything from the last 2 hours, the flowers being taken down, the tables cleared. Ava's shocked eyes looped in my head like an old film. One aching question rose up. Where did I go wrong? 25 years ago, when my wife, Lydia, died of cancer, Ava had just turned 3. The house felt half empty. The smell of disinfectant still lingered on the sheets, and Ava kept asking, "Where's Mommy, Dad?" I didn't know what to say, so I held her and promised, "From now on, I'll do everything so you never go without." I kept that promise. But in keeping it, maybe I planted the seeds of this disaster. When she was little, I was both dad and mom. At 5 a.m., I made breakfast, changed her, and dropped her at daycare before heading to the job site. At night, even bone-tired, I read her 3 bedtime stories, never missed a night. I believed if I sacrificed enough, she'd understand my love. When Ava started school, I chose a private school I believed would give her a better future. Each year's tuition was half the profit from a small project, but I paid it anyway. Scholarships covered a bit. The rest, small bills, stacked like bricks I made up by taking extra jobs. Some months I barely came home, just sent tuition and a message, "Keep trying, I've got you." When I got home late, I'd find her asleep on the sofa in her uniform, next to a test with an A+ and the line, "Show Dad when he gets home." The fatigue vanished. I thought, I'm doing the right thing. But as Ava grew, the gap widened between my world and hers. At 16, she had a circle of well-off friends, kids of doctors, lawyers, business owners. I remember the first birthday party in South Hill. The whole backyard dressed in balloons and white tents, guests arriving in Lexus, Volvo, Mercedes. I still wore my dusty work boots. She glanced down and whispered, "Dad, next time, please don't wear those. People will think you're a laborer." It wasn't meant to be cruel, but it cut deep. I just nodded. Okay, I understand. I started staying away from her parties. I thought it would help her fit in. Instead, I quietly sent money for clothes, an e-bike, then her first car when she was old enough. She said, "My friends all drive German cars, Dad." And I nodded again. When Ava got into Franklin Ben University out of state, I cried with pride. But that pride quickly turned into a financial load. Tuition, housing, clubs, spring break, a short term in Europe, everything needed money. I transferred funds on schedule like payroll. I kept the habit of writing in a notebook every time I sent money. Investment in Ava's future. Line after line, until the 6th notebook was thick. I realized I'd spent nearly $400,000 in her 8 years of schooling. I didn't regret it. I just hoped she'd understand and be grateful when she graduated. But life doesn't run on hope. At 24, Ava met Graham Hastings, From a family of Shares Club's charity, everyone in town knew. The Hastings had stakes in a local bank. Their names sat on hospital donor boards. They lived in a world where a handshake was worth an investment. The first time I met Graham, I saw it in his eyes. Polite, proper, but no respect. He spoke to me like to a junior staffer. "I hear you run a construction company. That's great. I've always admired people who work with their hands." A half smile. I understood the hint. With your hands, not your head. After that, Ava started to change. She avoided talking about my work, changed the subject when people asked about family. One day, I visited her at the apartment I paid for, wearing a paint-stained jacket. She opened the door, looked at me for a second, then said softly, "Dad, next time you come by, please dress a bit neater. My neighbors are Graham's colleagues." "Neater?" "Yes. I mean, more presentable," I smiled. Presentable. A polite reminder I didn't meet her world standard. From then on, her texts changed. No more, "How are you, Dad?" It was, "Dad, I need an extra $2,000 for tuition." "Dad, I need to buy a plane ticket to visit Graham's family." The thank yous faded. The last message before graduation was, "Dad, please transfer the money before Friday. I need to book a hotel." I put the phone down quietly. I told myself, she'll understand. When she has a family, when she has a child, she'll know what a father's sacrifice is. But today's wedding, where she kicked me out for fear I'd embarrass her, proved the opposite. I stopped at a gas station outside town. Under the dim sign, I opened my phone and pulled up notes. I needed to write things down to stay calm, not act on emotion. I typed short lines, each word steady like nails into wood. Confirmed stop payments done. Monitor emails from the bank. Review subcontracts, flowers, sound, photography, catering. Prepare Ava's financial file, total expenses over 25 years. Schedule a meeting with Attorney Kane tomorrow morning. Each line was one step out of emotion and back to reason. I didn't allow myself to get angry. I had already lost enough. I put my pen down and looked at the last line I'd just written, "No more raising her the wrong way." For 25 years, I funded my daughter's dream, a dream of happiness, of the future, of a world I thought money could buy gratitude for. But it turns out I was the one lulled to sleep by that dream. Now, I don't want her to pay me back. I just want to give her back reality, the very thing I accidentally took from her with blind love and sacrifice. I looked out through the window. In the distance, the lights from Ironwood Hall still flickered, faintly in the night. I told myself, "Ava, you're going to have to learn again from the beginning, and this time, I will never pay your tuition for you again." The next afternoon, Spokane got a light rain. Early spring rain, not enough to soak a shirt, but enough to bring back that chill in the heart. I sat in the small back office, once my and Lydia's tool room, with a cup of coffee gone half cold. On the desk was the stack of papers I'd gathered the night before. Tuition bills, apartment leases, car receipts, wire transfer slips, and the wedding contract I'd signed just a month earlier. The phone buzzed. The name on the screen, Ava. I watched it light up for a long moment. I'd ignored 6 calls last night. But now, I felt it was time to talk, not to argue, but to face the truth. I picked up. "Dad!" Ava's voice was hoarse, choking, and rushed. "Please, restore the payments. Everything's falling apart. The caterer is threatening to sue. The venue wants money up front, and Graham is mad at me. Dad, please don't do this to me." I didn't answer right away. Rain tapped evenly on the tin roof, filling the heavy silence between us. I asked slowly, "Ava, do you remember the last time you thanked me?" Dead quiet on the other end. Only a shaky breath. "Dad, this isn't the time for that. I just need you to transfer the money, then we'll talk later, okay?" I smiled sadly. "Later when, Ava? After the wedding is over and I go back to being the Embarrassing, Dad? A small sob slipped out. I could hear her trying to hold back tears. Dad, I didn't mean anything bad. I just wanted everything to go smoothly. I didn't think you would do this. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the family photo on the wall. Me, Lydia, and 3-year-old Ava grinning beside the old pickup. You know, Ava, for 25 years I've kept track of every expense for you, not because I'm petty, but because it's how I keep memories. I remember every check, every receipt, every tuition bill, every item I bought for you. I paused a beat, then said slowly, altogether, about $920,000. On the other end, Ava drew in a sharp breath. What? No way. I thought, at most, 50,000. I chuckled, but it sounded dry. Right, 50,000 goes down easier, doesn't it? But no, Ava, a little each month. Private school, college, dorms, study abroad, cars, rent, living costs, and this wedding. Every small thing adds up into a mountain of money and a mountain of debt in gratitude. For the first time, she didn't answer right away. Only a long sigh, threaded with rain beating the window. I went on. I didn't cancel your wedding, Ava. I only stopped funding it. It's still your wedding. The only difference is you have to pay for it. Her voice faltered. Dad, are you trying to teach me a lesson? This isn't the way. People are looking at me like a fraud. Graham is blaming me. You're making me lose everything. No, Ava. I spoke slowly, weighing each word. I'm not making you lose anything. I'm taking back what you never learned. And you need to learn it now, or you may never get another chance. There was shuffling on the line. A male voice cut in, tight with anger. Graham Hastings. Mr. Mercer, I think it's time for two men to talk. You can't just act on a whim like this. You're humiliating your daughter in public. If you need money, we'll transfer it, but you must respect this wedding. I stayed even. Mr. Hastings, I don't need your money. I just need the truth to sit where it belongs. And if you really want to be a man, pay for your own wedding, instead of letting a 68-year-old man do it. That line wasn't just for Graham, it was for all of us who sometimes forget who stands quietly behind us. What do you think? If it were you, would you have the courage to do what Mr. Calvin did? Share your honest thoughts below. Someone out there might need to hear your answer today. On the other end, Graham went silent. A moment later, he forced out a tight reply. You'll regret this. Maybe. But at least I won't regret selling my self-respect. I heard the phone being yanked away, then Ava again. Dad, don't talk to him. Please. I promise I'll pay it back, but I can't right now. They'll laugh in my face. My voice softened but stayed firm. Shame doesn't kill anyone, honey, but ingratitude kills a family, and we're standing right at that edge. I heard her sob. Maybe for the first time in her life, Ava truly understood that money isn't endless, and love isn't a debt that never comes due. I added, gently but decisively, tomorrow, my attorney will reach out. We'll do everything by the book. Dad, she nearly screamed, please don't. I'll be so ashamed. I closed my eyes briefly. Ava, shame is the only thing that might change you. If you want to keep living in a fantasy, then consider yesterday your first lesson. I was about to end the call, but then heard her whisper, broken, Dad, I never thought it would turn out like this. I just wanted to make you proud. You don't have to make me proud, Ava. You just need to remember who taught you to stand up straight. I hung up. I sat quietly for a while. The room grew dim, with only the desk lamp pooling light over the papers. The rain outside was steady, like a heartbeat slowing after a storm. I reached for the coffee pot and topped off my cup. Steam rose in a thin blur, threading through the yellowed pages. I turned each one and sorted tuition, rent, cars, personal expenses, the wedding. Every category had proper documentation. Every figure held a piece of memory. I pulled a blank sheet and wrote a bold header, Full audit Mercer family. Support. Reason Spirity 5 years. Then I took the pen and filled in each line. Riverside Prep $118,400. Franklin Bend University $284,000. Rent and living costs $96,200. Cars and insurance $72,000. Study abroad terms and summer programs $46,800. Ava's wedding $302,000 estimated. Total $919,400. I put the pen down and leaned back. 7 figures stared back, cold and exact as a verdict. I smiled faintly. Not because I felt I'd won, but because I finally saw the boundary. For years I taught Ava that money could open doors. Today I realized money had slammed the door between father and daughter. I folded the stack, clipped it into a file, and set it in the drawer beside an old photo of Lydia. Outside, the rain had eased. A thin blade of sunlight slipped through the clouds, struck the desk, and flashed off the coffee cup. I took a sip. The bitterness spread warm and clear in my mouth. I spoke softly to myself and to Lydia. See? I'm not angry. I'm just reclaiming the truth. Because sometimes the right way to love is to let someone fall. Night fell slowly over the quiet neighborhood. The rain had stopped. Only damp clung to the window ledge and the old wood smell filled the small back office. I switched on a second desk lamp. Warm light spread over the scuffed wood, touching the paper edges worn by time. Tonight, I wouldn't let myself be tired. If I had chosen truth, I had to see it through. I dragged the steel gray filing cabinet to the middle of the room. 4 drawers, heavy and stubborn like an old mule, each with a laminated label I'd printed and sealed years ago. One by one, private school, college rental, cars, credit cards, travel, equipment, wedding. Seeing those straight labels, I glimpsed my younger self. A man so meticulous he sometimes ended up alone. Maybe that very habit saved me today. I placed a stack of blank paper on my right and opened the laptop. A new spreadsheet appeared. The top row became columns typed by calloused fingers: date, description, amount, category, running total. I took a breath and pulled the first drawer. 1. Private School Riverside Prep. The file sat neatly in an indigo folder. Each school year had its own envelope, with the tuition notice, transfer receipt, and sometimes a photo of Ava in her uniform dress, smiling after a play. I entered line by line: tuition, uniform fees, activity fees from 1st grade through 12th. The numbers climbed: 8,200, 9,400, 10,600. The last high school years reached 12,000 per year. Final. Mark. Riverside Prep total, $118,400. A dry number, beneath which were skipped breakfasts and nights I slept sitting up, drill still dusty with concrete. 2. College Franklin Bend. The college drawer was thickest and heaviest. I lifted the whole stack onto the desk, edges whitened from overuse. Dorm contracts, meal plans, club dues, student insurance, club contributions, study abroad, summer term, all lined up like train cars that never stopped. I typed and typed. Every $52,000 for tuition pressed half a beat on my heart. $15,000 for room and board each year rang like a long note on an old string. I paused at Italy term, $8,200, remembering Ava's voice. Essential for my major, Dad. When I finished the last line, the spreadsheet read $284,000. I leaned back, hearing the desk lamp cord hum like a sigh. 3. Housing and living. Riverview. The third drawer smelled newer, the post-college years. Riverview apartment lease, $2,400 per month, 30 months in steady clicks, about $72,000 total. Next to it were add-on card statements: phone, furniture, kitchen gear, boutique coffee, and some work dinners with new friends. Some months over the limit, some months late. Each time I quietly covered it with a note, "Track your spending next time." There was no next time. I totaled $96,200 for housing and living, plus scattered card covers. The number sat like a pebble in a boot small, but it makes you bleed over distance. 4. Cars from safe to friend group standard. The cars drawer was thinner, but no lighter. First Honda Civic, I chose it for safety, $18,000. Later, when her friend switched to German, I signed for a BMW 320i, $28,000. A few years after, a BMW X3 for work environment fit, insurance, maintenance, inspections, registration, stacked like shingles. I keyed in annual premiums, tire replacements, a minor fender bender in late fall. The total settled quietly over $70,000. I glanced at the old photo on the cabinet. Ava in the driver's seat, eyes bright on delivery day, me smiling beside her. Back then, I didn't know some of that shine came from weight on my back. 5. Credit cards. The bills trailing the promises. I opened credit cards, the envelopes I least liked to touch. Inside, monthly statements with tiny items, spa, last-minute airfare, Christmas shopping, Sunday brunches where a plate of eggs cost a mason's day wage. Some months, she texted, I slipped. Some just an emoji with, "Help me one last time, Dad." That last time repeated a few dozen times. I entered them under personal past due cards and carefully tagged, "Covered by me." No scolding. But each line was a thin slice across my own pride. Why didn't I stop sooner? 6. Travel and equipment, the things that seem small. The travel drawer was light in the hand, not in totals. Group trips, domestic flights, a few must attend for networking. The equipment drawer held receipts for phones, laptops, a camera for a media course, items labeled investment for the future. I entered them in order. The cursor blinked as if urging me on, then settled at $46,800 for all short programs and overseas summers, not counting devices. 7. Wedding, the most expensive flowers or lessons. I opened the last drawer. Wedding. Fresh folder, ink still crisp. Dress paid, floral deposit transferred, venue authorized, music confirmed, photography contracted, lighting premium package. I marked each item and typed it in. Here, I needed to adjust last night's estimate. Tired and bitter, I had rolled in the full package value. But after the bank revoked authorizations and vendors recovered assets under contract, my net commitment dropped by half. I added a small note. Net cost after recovery offsets, about $150,000, projected. The remaining items moved to dispute refund status. Not a miracle, a contract principle. I had read every line before signing, and that caution was now my life raft in a sea of public opinion. I straightened up and glanced at the running total column. The figures climbed rung by rung, like a man on a grade who doesn't look back. 118,400, 284,000, 96,200, over 70,000, 46,800, about 150,000. And then the final number appeared, about $940,000, interim total, not counting undocumented incidentals. I added a bold line, interim total, about $930,000 to $950,000. On the desk, the coffee had gone cold. I set down my pen and turned on the flatbed scanner. Its soft whir filled the room like a night cricket, each invoice, contract, receipt, and memo becoming tidy PDFs. I built folders by year, then by quarter, then by category. I created a 25-year timeline file and marked the milestones that still made my heart jolt at a glance. 2000 to 2012, Riverside Prep First Uniform A in English Fall Play. 2013 to 2016. Franklin Bend First Late Transfer due to a delayed job Italy term photo on Ponte Vecchio. 2017 to 2019. Riverview Apartment add-on card first. Dad, can you send it early? 2020 to 2023. Cars insurance must attend trips. 2024. Met Graham first dinner. Dress more. Presentably, Dad. 2025. Wedding contract authorization revoked the night the flowers were taken down. At each milestone, I attached a photo. Ava in a navy graduation gown. Ava beside the new BMW. Ava smiling with Florence's bell tower behind her. Moments I once thought proved a happy youth now lay beside cold invoices. The human heart is very good at fooling itself with pretty frames. I renamed the final file. Ava, Statement of Support, 25 years, Draft V1, PDF. Below it, I noted, no commentary, just facts. If anything, that's what I'd learned. Facts don't argue. I opened email and typed in Marjorie Kane, the silver-haired attorney I'd tentatively booked yesterday. Subject line: Urgent consult request. Attached documents. 25 years of financial support. In the body, I wrote briefly, the way I send construction drawings to a client. Marjorie, I'm attaching the digitized file of all support. Paid to Ava over 25 years, categorized with statements and receipts. Interim summary. About $930,000 to $950,000 details in Summary, XLSX. Wedding. After revocation of authorizations, net commitment stands at about $150,000. The rest is in dispute, refund status per vendor terms. I need an urgent morning slot tomorrow. Please schedule the earliest available time. Goal: turn the entire emotional story into transparent procedure, set clear legal boundaries, and draft the demand letter to standard. Thank you, Calvin Mercer. I attached 7 PDFs, 1 Excel file, and the timeline. The cursor hovered over send for a few seconds. It felt like signing the final permit for a project that had waited too long. Then I clicked. The room went so quiet I could hear the clock tick. I leaned back and laid a hand on Lydia's photo. See, I finally did the one thing I'm best at, turning a mess into a drawing set, a storm into a checklist. I printed the summary, slipped it into a clear binder, and added a table of contents. Before filing it away, I took a red pen and wrote a big line on the cover. No arguing, no judging, just facts. I dimmed the lights, leaving a thin stripe across the desk. Outside, night wind moved through the maples, tapping the glass with a faint tremor. I exhaled, long and slow. Calm doesn't show up on its own. It comes after you decide you won't speak another emotional word. The phone lit up. An auto reply from Kane and Alder confirmed receipt, with a rare handwritten note from Marjorie. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Don't bring feelings. Bring a pen. I smiled. I had a pen, the file, the facts. And for the first time in years, I had a boundary. I stood, turned off the lamp. In the soft, dark, I heard myself murmur, "Tomorrow, we'll talk like adults." I closed the office door, leaving behind a father's audit finished. Before dawn, as tidy as a just-poured first slab, flat and solid, ready to bear everything that comes next. The next morning, Spokane felt freshly washed. No more rain, just the scent of pine drifting through the window as I drove toward downtown. The sign for Kane and Alder law offices appeared on a red brick building at the Riverside corner, Old Bones, famous for cases won on evidence more than words. I parked, took the clear binder, and walked slowly down a corridor of cold, shining marble. Marjorie Kane was already waiting in a small conference room, walls sound-dampened, a glossy cherrywood table. She was near 70, short silver hair, half-rimmed glasses, and that familiar Pelican ink smell. When I set the file on the table, she looked up, didn't smile, just gave a slight nod. "I've reviewed the files you sent. It's rare I see a family archive kept like a bridge project," I answered quietly. "I used to be an engineer, now a contractor. Numbers and drawings are the only things that don't betray you." Marjorie opened the binder, turning pages, eyes tracking figures. She said nothing for a few minutes, just marked brief notes in red. Sufficient evidence of cash flow payment behavior, extended timeline. "Calvin," she said, "legally, you have two options. 1. Let it stop at feelings just a father and daughter at odds. 2. We reclassify all this support as advances or interest-free loans based on behavior and financial practice to create a lawful obligation to repay." I stayed quiet and just nodded. Marjorie continued, "I'll draft the demand letter. It will itemize each expense and include the final reconciliation sheet you provided. They will have 30 days to respond in writing. If not, we move to step 2, civil mediation." "Mediation," I repeated, "not a lawsuit? No need to sue if they understand your intent. Sometimes legal language does better than family language." I smiled. "I don't want to fight. I just want them to read the numbers and understand their value." Marjorie looked at me for a long moment, then spoke slowly. "Then remember this. From now on, everything must be in writing. No phone calls, no texts, no tone of voice. Only words, dates, signatures. Treat it like dealing with a business." She turned her screen toward me and pointed at the letterhead she was typing. "Ray, formal notice of reimbursement request. Calvin Mercer versus Ava Mercer Hastings. Dear Mrs. Mercer Hastings, this letter serves as a formal notice requesting reimbursement of the financial support provided by Mr. Calvin Mercer over a 25-year period." I watched the first lines appear and felt no more trembling. This was no longer a father teaching his child, but a man who had fulfilled his duty and now only wanted to put justice back where it belonged. Marjorie read another passage. "The total value of direct and indirect payments, verified through bank records, receipts, and credit card statements, amounts to $947,800 US. Pursuant to the Washington state contract law, together with financial practices between related parties involving transfers without stated conditions, we request that you reimburse the full amount within 30 days from receipt of this letter unless both parties reach a different agreement in writing." She added a note at the end, her voice dry and decisive. "We'll attach the 7-category reconciliation, a timeline, and notarized statement of records. I'll send the electronic copy at 11:30 a.m. and also print a company-stamped hard copy for hand delivery to the hotel where they're staying." I looked at the clock. 10:48. Marjorie hit print. The machine hummed, black ink crisp on white paper. The first page slid out, still warm with that new paper smell. My eyes landed on the last line. "Total due, $947,800. We sincerely hope to resolve this matter privately and respectfully." She took the seal and pressed it down. A neat, final thump. "Done," she said. "Now we just wait for the other side to read it." At 11:30 a.m., the thick envelope with the official letter left Kane and Alder's office with the courier. I watched through the glass as sunlight drew a clean, straight band across the floor. Everything was tidy, no theatrics, no tears. At 12:10, my phone buzzed. The name lit up. Ava. I let the screen glow for a moment and then turned it off. A text came right after. "Dad, I just got the letter. What is this? Are you going to sue me?" I didn't reply. I noted in my logbook. 12:15, Ava received the letter. No response. Hold the rule. No emotion. Only procedure. An hour later, 5 more missed calls. Then an email from Graham in all caps. "This is outrageous. I forwarded it to Marjorie with a short note. Please handle the response. That afternoon, Kane and Alder sent back confirmation. Recipient Ava Mercer Hastings signed for the letter at 1:47 p.m. at the Bellevue Grand Hotel, room 607. I read the record, folded it up, and my hands didn't shake at all. I'd never seen things this clearly in my life. In the afternoon, I went back to the job site. April's sun poured over the row of buildings going up in steel. The smell of paint, the scorch of wood from the saw, and the rhythm of hammers reminded me of my own world where every error can be corrected with a square and a tape. Under the corrugated roof, the crew kept working. They greeted me with dust-streaked smiles. I nodded back, climbed the scaffold, and checked the freshly poured load-bearing column. Sweat ran down my temple and into my collar reel in a way that felt good. I was back where I belonged. Work, discipline, order. On break, I sat on a steel step, opened my notebook, and wrote a single line in pencil. April 25th, sent. Demand letter. Total, $947,800. Status, issued. Note, no emotion, only procedure. I closed the notebook and looked up at the paling sky. A few thin clouds drifted by, sunlight slanting into pale bands like ground steel. I knew Ava would call again soon, maybe crying, maybe furious, maybe with Graham speaking hard words for her. But this time, I wouldn't need to react. The lesson had already been written not in a raised voice, but in the language of law. I was no longer the sentimental father. I was a man protecting his labor the only way this world respects, with signatures, numbers, and a 30-day response window. By the time I left the site, dusk had bronzed half the sky. I drove home and turned on local radio, the host's steady voice ticking along like the tempo of ordinary life. On the passenger seat, Marjorie's binder sat intact. I set my hand on it not as evidence, but as a new kind of peace, the peace you get when you dare to cut the cord with reason. That night, I wrote the last line in my journal. When feelings fail, let the law do its job. And sometimes, justice is also a way to love. 2 days after the demand letter went out, the storm broke not from the courthouse, but from the last place you'd expect, social media. Early Monday, I had just poured coffee when the phone began to rattle nonstop. Texts, emails, notifications coming down like hail. An old friend sent me a link with a short note. Cal, you should see this. Ava's post. On my daughter's page, where she used to post travel shots and glossy dinners, there was now a near 1,000-word essay with a photo of her in a wedding dress. Eyes red. The first line read, "My biological father ruined my wedding, cut off all payments on my big day, and is now demanding nearly $900,000, calling it an investment. I don't recognize him anymore." Below, hundreds of comments flooded in, pity, outrage, piling on. A few from Boise's upper circle. Hastings' friends reshared it with captions like, "Money can't buy love, but someone clearly thinks it can buy gratitude." I read every line, not to torture myself, but to understand the other side's strategy. They went for emotional offense, painting me as a bitter, money-obsessed old man who threw away fatherhood for a few figures. The media hit was organized. Within 24 hours, the post was echoed by groups on modern women, family and personal freedom. Truth is stranger than fiction. The story got sliced, embellished, and repeated until many believed I was the father who crashed a wedding out of spite. That evening, a reporter from the Boise Business Chronicle emailed my company inbox. Subject, inquiry, family dispute affecting corporate operations. Body. We have information about a family financial dispute involving Mr. Mercer that may affect company operations. We would like an official comment before publishing. I read it twice and looked out the window. The city lights were steady as always, but I knew if I mishandled this, In a few hours, both my reputation and my work could be swept into rumor. I called Marjorie Kane. Her voice was as steady as ever. "I've read the post. They're playing the emotional public card. Nothing new. We won't respond with feelings. We'll respond with facts." "You mean a press conference?" I asked. "Exactly. But not a defense. Transparency. You have the full file, yes? All scanned and ready. Then tomorrow morning, you'll publish it. All of it." I was silent for a few seconds. Images flashed. Old receipts, photos of my daughter smiling beside her first BMW, the statements I'd kept for 25 years. "Marjorie, if I do that, there's no going back." "Calvin," she said slowly, "sometimes silence makes you look guiltier than the real offender. If they attack your name, you have the right to tell the truth. But tell it in a language they can't twist, numbers and evidence." The next morning, I was at the office by 7:30. Our internal comms team was ready per Marjorie's guidance. We skipped social media and chose a transparency briefing live-streamed on the company website and sent as a recording to local outlets. The main conference room was cleared out. One long table, a projector, and a neat board behind me. 25-year timeline support for Ava Mercer, 2000-2025. When the camera light went red, I didn't read a script. I spoke slowly, enunciating. This is not an act of revenge. This is an accounting of love when it's been treated as obligation. For 25 years, I paid for everything for my daughter, from tuition to housing, cars, and finally the wedding. Total: $947,800 with verified documentation. I'm not asking for love back. I'm asking for fairness for what has been taken for granted. I clicked to the timeline. The screen showed each phase: Ava in a Riverside prep uniform, Franklin Bend graduation, Riverview rent statements, BMW contracts, the wedding invoices. Each image paired with a number, a date, and a brief note: paid from Calvin Mercer account verified by bank statement. I ended with, "I don't regret loving my child. I regret letting that love go unreceipted." Silence for a few seconds, then the shutters started. Marjorie stepped up with a short legal statement. "All records have been verified by Northwest Meridian Bank and are held at Kane and Alder. Any contrary public claim will be treated as defamation." The briefing spread faster than expected. Within 24 hours, outlets quoted my opener, pulling the line. "This is an accounting of love when it's been treated as obligation." The internet split in two, but this time, my silence had been replaced by evidence, and public sentiment tilted toward reason. A finance professor shared my remarks, writing, "This is a textbook case of emotional accounting, when parents turn love into a debt because children forget to repay with gratitude." A Seattle businesswoman commented, "He's not rigid, he's clear-eyed. Anyone who's ever paid for a child's school, home, or wedding understands this feeling. He just pulled the plug on ingratitude." The Boise Chronicle called to request the 25-year timeline for a feature on boundaries in modern family support. The local TV station invited me to a talk on responsibility and love in parent-child relationships. The tide turned. From cruel father, I became the most clear-headed dad in America this week. That night, my company inbox filled with apologies. A partner who had pulled out over rumors wrote, "Mr. Mercer, we apologize for trusting social media before the facts. We respect how you handled this." I read them all, no smile, no smugness, just ease. If your name is clean, you don't need to shout, you only need to put it under light. Online. Ava went silent. Her post disappeared without explanation. A few Hastings Circle friends took down their shares or posted hedges like, "We shouldn't meddle in others' private matters." Graham, unable to leave well enough alone, put up a weak defense. "We don't deny the help, but it was his choice, with no repayment terms." The comments erupted. So you admit you lived off someone else's money. Nearly $1 million in help and you're complaining. Don't tell a father how to love if you've never been one. The post was deleted 2 hours later. I sat in my office scrolling through headlines. One from a major paper made me stop. From feelings to evidence, a lesson in boundaries and gratitude, the Mercer case. I leaned back. Outside, the sunset burned red. Light flashed off a hard hat still dusty on the shelf. I didn't feel joy. I felt peace, the kind that arrives once you realize truth doesn't need to beat anyone. It only needs to be recorded. I wrote in my notebook, April 30th. Media counter, successful. Result, transparency beats emotion. Note, no revenge needed, only fairness. And I closed it. A new chapter was about to open, not in words, but in the quiet of people who finally understood. Silence is the mark of defeat, while transparency is the only victory that doesn't need applause. News spreads faster than any forest fire. Within a week of the briefing, the name Mercer Hastings appeared in the society section of nearly every local paper. Not for love, but for money, and a truth laid bare. As always, the upper crust fears one thing more than failure: losing face. And the Hastings family, 4 generations of good name in banking and charity, knew that a single scandal tied to $900,000 in borrowed help could derail the whole prestige train. Monday morning, they convened an emergency meeting at their Boise suburb estate. The press called it a closed-door family council. But word from a household staffer reached me quickly. Graham's father, Lawrence Hastings, slammed his hand on the table, voice cold as metal. Our family cannot be linked to a financial claim. He, meaning me, has records, proof, and the public on his side. We must protect the brand. Graham said nothing. Ava told me later he just sat there gripping a glass of water. Their lawyer, a slick-speaking young woman, offered advice like a gold-plated blade. If Mr. Mercer proceeds with asset recovery, the best course is to dissolve the marriage as soon as possible to separate finances. That way the Hastings family won't be tied to repayment. The room went dead quiet. Ava said she felt flayed alive. 2 weeks earlier they'd called her the family's newest pride. Now she was risk a stain to be wiped from. The ledger. That afternoon I was inspecting a site when the phone rang. Ava showed on the screen this time not the chaotic call of anger, but a broken voice. "Dad," she choked. "They all left me." I stopped and looked out over the sunlit yard where welders sparked the skeleton frame. "What did you say?" "They said this marriage can't be saved. Graham's father said I've brought shame on the family. They want an annulment. I don't know what to do." Her voice shook like someone standing in rain in an empty square. I asked softly, without raising mine, "Ava, have you ever contributed anything?" Silence. A silence long enough for me to hear a truck backing up, the collision alarm beeping sharp on the road beyond. She whispered, "I just wanted peace. I didn't know it would come to this." "No," I said. "You knew. You just refused to look." I didn't say more. I left her with the space to hear what silence says. On the 3rd day after the briefing, I heard Graham left the Bellevue Grand. Management confirmed with Marjorie to close the paperwork. Mr. Graham Hastings checked out this morning and left no forwarding address. Room 607 now has a secondary occupant only, Ava Mercer Hastings. Ava stayed alone. Her add-on card was frozen by the bank after a Hastings family dispute. Her primary card was maxed out, mostly wedding dresses, makeup, and pre-ceremony parties. She sent me a message near midnight. "I don't have money to pay for the room. They said they'll cut the power tomorrow and take my key card. I'm sitting here with only the wedding dress in the closet." I read it and didn't reply. I pictured it. A luxurious but cold hotel room, amber light reflecting off the white fabric of a wedding gown hanging still in the closet. What used to mean happiness now looked like a shroud for an illusion. Maybe for the first time in her life, Ava understood the price of dependence. Close to midnight, the phone rang again. Ava, still. I let it ring for nearly half a minute, then picked up. Dad. Her voice was raw. I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I don't know where to start over. I listened and didn't cut in. Everyone's turned their back on me. Friends, too. They read the news and look at me like a stranger. No one calls. No one asks. And Graham? He says he needs time. I exhaled softly. Then you have time now, Ava. Enough to think about what you want to do next. Dad. She burst into tears. You're all I have left. I looked at the clock. Almost midnight. I didn't want to turn this moment into a promise I'd regret. I spoke slowly. Ava, we'll talk tomorrow. Like two adults. She went quiet. Only her shaky breathing remained. I hung up before my heart could soften. I stayed in the study and opened my notebook. The desk lamp cast a pale band of gold across the blank page. I wrote a short line. May 3rd. Ava was left behind. Graham walked away. Status. Alone. Not fully aware of the consequences. Note. Keep boundaries. I closed the notebook and set it beside the cold coffee cup. The night was strangely quiet. I didn't feel joy or vindication. Only a kind of tenderness, but the kind buried under a layer of cold discipline. I thought of Lydia, my late wife. If she were alive, she'd probably hug Ava, wipe her tears, then turn to scold me for being too stubborn. But Lydia also taught me one thing. If a child doesn't learn responsibility, every kind of help is useless. I looked at the old photo on the desk, Lydia smiling, her eyes bright. I spoke softly to the picture. You see, I'm not rescuing her. I'm waiting for her to learn to swim. The next morning, I got up early and opened the window. Fresh air came in with the scent of young pines and far-off traffic. A new day. I still had to get to the job site. Before I left, I picked up my notebook and reread the last line. Keep boundaries. I underlined it once more and nodded, because sometimes being a father doesn't mean rushing in to save forever. It means standing still, letting your child face the consequences and trusting that from that rubble, they'll rebuild a life with their own hands. I closed the door. Morning light poured in, washing a little of the cold from my chest. Today, I was no longer the betrayed father, nor the man collecting a debt. I was just a man learning to love with limits, the hardest, but most necessary kind of love there is. I was reviewing the steel beam drawings when the phone buzzed. The name lit up. Ava. This time I didn't hesitate. I picked up. My daughter's voice wasn't shaky or angry anymore. It was the exhaustion of someone waking from a long dream. Dad, can I talk? Go ahead. I'm listening. A pause. Then a deep breath, as if she were gathering courage. Dad, I realize all these years I treated you like a checking account. I didn't respond. She went on, voice tightening. I've never truly thanked you. Not once. At least you know now, I said softly. That's the first step. Ava was quiet, then spoke slowly. I know I'm wrong, but I can't stand the whole world looking at me. Can you take down the public files? Just let me live a little normal again. I leaned back and looked up at the shop ceiling. The steel beam sliced the light into diagonal bars like a cell window. Ava, the truth doesn't have a switch. You can't flip it on and off when it's inconvenient. But I'm ashamed. Truth is bitter medicine, I said. You have to swallow it to clear the poison. On the other end, I heard her sob, not loud, just quietly. I knew this moment mattered. Either I went soft again, or she would truly start to change. I chose the second. Ava, I said slowly, word by word I'll help you, but only if you help yourself first. What does that mean? It means this. I'm setting 3 conditions. If you meet them, I'll support you at the bare minimum so you don't starve. Nothing more, no rescue. I took my notebook, opened to a blank page, and read clearly as if reading a contract. Condition 1. Within 2 weeks, you must find any lawful job server, office cleaning, warehouse, Cashier, the position doesn't matter, only that you have a real timesheet. Condition 2. For the first 6 months, you may not ask me for money. You make your own budget and take responsibility for your spending. Condition 3. Once a week, you'll meet me not to complain, but to report progress and difficulties. If there's a problem, we'll discuss it like two adults. I paused to let it sink in. If you accept these 3 conditions, I'll send $1,000. Call it first air to breathe. It's not relief money. It's an advance so you can stand up. On the other end, Ava said nothing for nearly a minute. Then her voice came back hoarse and small as a breeze. Dad, I agree. I closed my eyes. Good. Start tomorrow. That afternoon, I transferred $1,000 to my daughter's account. The memo line had only 3 words. For 7 days shelter. No extra message, no emoji, no soothing. 2 days later, Ava texted, I got a job. Blue Pine Restaurant, evening shift. Server, first shift tomorrow. I read it and smiled slightly. Blue Pine, a place where I'd had lunch with a client just a few blocks from the site. I remembered it well. Warm lights, soft jazz, crowded, and servers who never stop walking. Not easy, but a good start. The next evening, I drove past Blue Pine and parked across the street. Through the glass, I saw Ava in a server uniform, white shirt, black apron, hair tied back. She carried a drink tray, bowed to a table, then hurried to the station. Awkward, clumsy, but she didn't quit. I watched a long time, then left, without letting her see me. For the first time, Ava showed up to work on time. A week passed. I got a short text. I got my first shift pay, $216. Not much, but I feel good. Thank you, Dad. Those last 3 words made me stop for a long time. Thank you, Dad. 25 years, and I'd never heard them come out so simply. I didn't reply right away. I just wrote in my notebook. May 10th, Ava completed week 1, found a job, received her own pay. Note, she's beginning to understand the value of an hour's work. Saturday night, with the site closed, I got a call from Marjorie Kane. Her voice was steady, pure lawyer. Calvin, I need to remind you, the 30-day clock is still running. I know. Do you want an extension? I can send a notice to pause the demand if you think Ava is acting in good faith. I was quiet for a moment. No, Marjorie, keep it as is. The deadline remains 30 days. She exhaled softly, as if she'd expected that. Do you really believe she can pay it? I'm not waiting for her to pay the money. I'm waiting for her to pay back her character. A long silence. Then Marjorie spoke almost like a friend, not a lawyer. Sometimes the biggest tuition in life isn't at a university. I smiled and looked out the window. The city glowed at night, but my eyes went to the workers sweeping the street, clearing materials, people who still trade each hour for their self-respect. I know, I said, and I'm letting my daughter pay that tuition herself. That night, I sat in the study and opened the stamped 25-year spreadsheet. Under the line, total support, $947,800. I added a small note for me alone. The first repayment not in money, but in attitude. I closed the laptop and leaned back. Night air moved through the frame, carrying a hint of rain and far-off traffic. I thought of Lydia and imagined that if she were here, she'd smile and say, "See, our kid isn't ruined, she just hadn't been allowed to start over the right way." I nodded lightly. Sometimes love isn't in the saving, it's in granting someone the chance to save themselves. And tonight, for the first time in months, I felt my chest lighten. Maybe the lesson is finally soaking into the right person. Because I've always believed every tuition, no matter how painful, comes with a receipt. 3 weeks after Ava started at Blue Pine, I thought the storm had passed. But the world rarely leaves a rising story alone. One Tuesday morning, as I was getting ready for the site, my phone lit up again. Texts, emails, and pings from sites I never bother with. A friend sent a link with a short note. Cal, they're at it again. I opened it. A string of anonymous accounts clearly from the Hastings side posted new pieces, pinning a photo of me from the old briefing with words like knives, a heartless father turning love into an invoice, a stingy old man who won't forgive his child. Where's fatherly love? Is it all contracts and lawyers now? I read it all, slowly, like someone reviewing a self-critique. This time, no anger rose. I just felt tired, but clear. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't hire takedowns. I simply opened Ava's message and asked gently, "Did you see what they posted?" "I did," she replied, "but I'm not paying attention. People only say what they want to believe, Dad." I smiled. "Good. Then let them tire themselves out." Then I posted a single photo on my own page, Ava's shift schedule, snapped from her phone, stamped by Blue Pine's manager. Caption: each line of a name is one step out of her father's shadow. I'm proud my daughter is doing the right thing. No explanations, no attacks. That photo said everything that needed saying. That day, Ava told me a difficult customer yelled at her because the ice in a drink melted slowly. "What did you do?" I asked. I apologized and brought a new glass. They still snapped at me. I just smiled, bowed, and walked away. Did it hurt? Yes. But less than when you asked me, "Have you ever contributed anything?" I laughed for the first time in months. That answer weighed more than any apology. That night, Ava sent a message. "Dad, I just opened a savings account. I put in $50 my money, not anyone else's. I know it's small, but I feel lighter." I stared at that line for a long time. $50 to me, less than a business lunch. But to her, the starting point of self-respect. I didn't reply, so I wouldn't break the rhythm of her independence. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote, May 20th, Ava deposited $50 in savings. Note: an adult begins with a small number, not a big promise. A week later, Ava called, her voice calmer than usual. "Dad, I want to tell you something." "Okay, go ahead." No, I can't repay you all, not right away. But I want to pay you back over time, not because of the law, but because of self-respect. What's your plan?" I made a schedule. Each month I'll send $200 to $300, depending on income. If I fall short, I'll make it up the next month. How long? Maybe years. Maybe a lifetime. But I want you to accept it so I'll remember. I was silent. My heart tightened once, not from emotion, but because for the first time my daughter sounded steady like an adult. "All right. Send me the plan." She sent it that night. Simple, no lawyer required, but I still forwarded it to Marjorie. Next morning she called back. I read it. "The proposal is fine, but I'll rewrite it as a payment plan with behavioral conditions, meaning she must maintain employment and not relapse into dependence." "Thank you," I said, "but this time, let it be more symbolic than binding. I want my daughter to learn, not fear." "You've changed," Marjorie chuckled at last. "You understand, law is the rail, and people are the train." I nodded, though she couldn't see. That same day, I received a short email from Graham Hastings. No subject, no greeting, just a few plain lines. I apologize for the misunderstanding on the wedding day. I shouldn't have let things go that far. I read it and deleted it. Some apologies only arrive after the crowd turns and their reputation is at risk. Those I don't need. One afternoon, Ava called to say she had a meeting with Graham's mother, Mrs. Hastings. "What do you plan to say to her?" I asked. "I don't want anything from her. I just want to say, thank you for teaching me a costly lesson about human value." I was silent, listening to a steadiness in her voice I hadn't heard before. That night, she told me. She refused to see me at first. But I stood at the gate for 10 minutes, then she let me in. I said a few sentences, then bowed and thanked her. What did she say? She said, "I have nothing to say to you. What did you do then? I smiled and answered, "Thank you for speaking with me. I understand now." I sat still for a long time after the call. In the dark, I could picture my daughter no longer the silk dress socialite, but a woman standing straight even when refused. I opened my notebook and wrote, May 28th, Ava met her former mother-in-law, was rejected, did not crumble. Note, the muscle fiber of responsibility is starting to harden. That night, I went out to the porch and poured a small drink. A light breeze, a rising moon, silver on the fence. I thought about these months from the day I was turned away from a wedding to tonight, when my daughter put $50 into savings. Some circles close not with an apology, but with quiet growth. I don't know how far Ava will go. She may fall, she may struggle more, but at least now I don't have to push her. She started to walk on her own. I spoke softly to myself, as if to Lydia somewhere in the wind. See, our girl is relearning life hour by hour, dollar by dollar, bow by bow. And I, finally, am relearning how to be a father. I raised my glass to the empty air. Not to celebrate a victory, but to mark a small, sacred milestone. When a child honors her own effort, a parent can finally rest. Kane and Alder's office glowed with early summer light. The big glass door reflected Spokane in building season engines, cranes, hammer beats drumming the street. In a wide room smelling of polished wood and fresh paper, I sat across from Marjorie Kane, the woman who'd walked me through the tensest weeks of my life. In front of me was a stack nearly an inch thick, the hardcover labeled Payment and Behavior Agreement, between Ava Mercer Hastings and Calvin Mercer. Marjorie's voice was low, slow, and steady as a clock. "This is the official document, Calvin. I balance the legal and the human, so it's not just a contract. It's a new boundary between you two." She flipped the first page and summarized the terms. 1. Flexible installment plan. Ava will transfer monthly payments of at least $200 or more depending on income. 2. No disparagement or public misinformation. If violated, the remaining balance becomes immediately due without adjudication. 3. 12-month review. If Ava maintains discipline and improves her finances, I, Calvin Mercer, may consider waiving a symbolic portion of interest, a discipline reward. At that, I smiled slightly. "You still phrase things very zen, Marjorie." Discipline reward sounds like what Lydia used to tell me. Discipline is the gentlest, hardest form of love. Marjorie looked over her frames and nodded. "I think Lydia would want you to choose this." Then she gestured toward the door. "She's waiting outside." "Shall I bring her in?" I drew a slow breath. "Bring her in." Ava walked in wearing a simple light blue work dress. Her hair was neatly tied, her face showed fatigue, but her eyes were clear, no longer timid. She sat down, nodded politely to Marjorie, then turned to me. "Thank you for coming, Dad." I nodded without speaking. Marjorie set the packet in front of her, voice even. "Ava, this has been carefully drafted. I need you to read all of it, every clause, and ask about anything you don't understand. There is no sign and be done." Ava opened the packet, her eyes moving slowly line by line. The room was silent, only pages turning and a pen tapping softly on the table. I watched my daughter, and for a moment I saw the 8-year-old who used to study at the kitchen table, biting her lip when she missed an addition. The difference was that today she was recalculating her life not with numbers, but with awareness. On Section 3, Ava asked, "What does we're evaluation after 12 months mean?" "It means," Marjorie explained, "if you stay disciplined, keep your job stable, and don't relapse into dependency, Mr. Mercer has the right to erase a symbolic portion of the debt." Ava nodded, jotting notes down. "And Section 2, commitment not to defame. What if someone else posts something? Not me. You're responsible for not encouraging, not assisting, and for publicly correcting misinformation. In short, you must protect the truth, not stay silent for lies. Got it. She read through nearly 10 pages. When she finished and looked up at me, her voice was calm and deliberate. Dad, I want to propose 2 additions. I raised an eyebrow. Marjorie looked intrigued. What are they? I asked. Ava took a deep breath. First, I want to take a personal finance course to learn how to budget, save, and invest properly. And the second, I'd like to add a clause about 40 hours of livers, community volunteering each year. I need to give something back, just like you gave me the chance to start over. The conference room went silent. Light from the window spilled across the table and onto her face, and for the first time, I didn't see pleading in her eyes, but the steady determination of someone who wants to become better. Marjorie smiled and wrote it into the document. I'll amend this to make it an official appendix. A good request, Ava, I said quietly. You know, I once wished you'd read your college apartment lease as carefully as you're reading this today. It would have saved us both a lot of trouble. Ava laughed softly, eyes glistening. Back then, I thought I knew everything. Now I see. No one is richer than the person who keeps learning. The signing was simple. No champagne, no photographers, just 3 people, 1 pen, and a sheet of paper redefining the boundaries of love. I signed first, then slid the document to my daughter. Ava held the pen, looked at me for a moment, then signed, her handwriting shaky but firm. Marjorie stamped it, flipped to the duplicate copy, and sealed it for notarization. The sound of that seal pressing into paper, thump, was clean, solid, final, an old chapter closed. All done, Marjorie said, gathering the papers. You two now have a new agreement, written not just in ink, but in change. Ava turned to me, voice low. Thank you for letting me sign again, this time with awareness. I nodded. Opportunities never disappear, honey. Sometimes they just need to be rewritten by a trembling hand. That evening, I took her out to dinner. Not some fancy restaurant, just a little burger place near the park, the same one we used to visit when she was in middle school. Ava sat across from me, still in her work clothes, her hair carrying the faint smell of the kitchen. When the server set the bill down, she reached for her wallet. Let me get this one. You sure? Yes, from my evening shift, I want to use money I earned for the right reason. I said nothing, letting her lay a few bills on the table. When the server walked away, Ava looked at me, eyes bright under the warm light. Dad, I want to be worthy of the Mercer name. I tilted my head slightly and replied, Sweetheart, the Mercers will be worthy of you when you're worthy of yourself. She smiled. A real smile this time, not forced. We didn't hug, didn't say anything sentimental. We just nodded, like 2 people who had finally completed the hardest project of their lives, one called family. On the drive home, I turned on the radio, then switched it off. Instead of music, I wanted to hear the wind through the window, the hum of tires on the road, sounds as light as my heart felt. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ava's car behind mine. Both of us stopped at the same red light. She waved, smiling softly. I waved back, then faced forward. The city lights rose into the deep blue sky, spreading like ink. And I thought, maybe this is the real ink, the kind that doesn't just mark paper but draws the line between love and responsibility. A contract at last becoming a beginning. 6 months passed since the day we signed that agreement in ink and trust. Spokane slid into an early winter, the air crisp, the sunlight still warm enough to soften the edges of old aches. Ava kept her job at Blue Pine. She moved into a small apartment on the north side of town, peeling walls, creaky wood floors, but a window that caught the sunrise. Every morning before work, she'd text me a simple message. Dad, I'm okay. No more requests for money, no more desperation. Just 3 steady words, like a heartbeat healing. Each month she sent payment statements, $250, sometimes $300, never late once. Next to the notes column, she'd add little comments. Got yelled at by a rude customer today, but stayed calm. Got my first $80 tip. Feels strange to earn it myself. Taking my finance exam soon. Turns out I might actually like studying. I printed those emails and kept them in a separate binder, labeled Mercer Family, Redemption Ledger. Each line, to me, was a monthly payment of love, not in money, but in maturity. One early October morning, I opened my laptop and revisited the public files about the dispute between me and Ava. After reading every page carefully, I started deleting the ones that no longer mattered. News articles, detailed reports, financial tables. I left only one short PDF, 3 pages long, with a single opening line. This is no longer a story about debt. It's a story about boundaries, about a father learning to let go and a daughter learning to stand. I saved it and shut the computer. It felt like closing an old door, not locking it, just leaving it open enough for air to pass through, a quiet reminder that the past still exists but no longer rules the present. By November, Ava and Graham's annulment was finalized. A small notice appeared in the local paper's social section. I read it, then quietly folded it away. Ava didn't offer excuses, didn't complain. She just texted me, "Dad, I'm okay. There's no one to blame, only choices to take responsibility for." I read it, then nodded. Not everyone has the courage to say that. A few weeks later, Ava started assisting in a community finance class, a free program for adults catching up in life. She wasn't the lead instructor, just a helper setting up materials, showing people how to build a budget. One weekend afternoon, I dropped by to listen. The small classroom at the community center had maybe 10 people. Ava stood by the whiteboard, marker in hand, voice calm and clear. When you earn $500, don't see it as everything. See 100 of it as your payment to the future, whether that's savings or responsibility. I sat in the back, quietly watching her. No one there knew I was her father, and maybe that was how it should be. One snowy December night, I stopped by Blue Pine during her shift. The place was busy, soft jazz playing. She spotted me, paused for half a second, then smiled and nodded. No approach, no stories, no requests. I ordered a salad and water. "When I went to pay," the manager said, "she told me not to take a tip from you. Said your family." I just smiled. Outside, cold wind swept down the street, carrying pine and snow. Through the restaurant window, I saw Ava wiping a table, bowing slightly to a guest, the warm light painting a soft gold halo on her hair. That night, back home, I opened my old notebook, the one still titled Mercer Family Support, 25 years. At the bottom, I added one neat note. We're both still paying installments. I pay mine in patience, she pays hers in responsibility. And each month, we're both repaying the small debts of the heart. I closed the notebook and set it beside Lydia's photo. Outside, the first snow fell quietly. I looked up and whispered to the woman I lost. "See, love? She's ironing her own shirts now, working, saying thank you. I don't need to win. I just needed to see her stand." I never did find that perfect little girl who used to draw in my workshop and call me her hero. But I found a grown woman forming, not flawless, but honest, learning to repay, learning to love through action. On New Year's Eve, a small envelope arrived from Ava. Inside was a handwritten card. "Dad, I know I haven't repaid everything you gave me, but maybe the one thing I owe most is your trust. I'll do my best so you'll never have to write another sad line in that ledger. Ava." I smiled, folded the card, and tucked it into the keepsake drawer. Something old and warm melted inside me like ice meeting sunlight. And maybe now I finally understand the meaning of the phrase, the invoice of love. Because love, without limits, turns into obligation. Kindness, without discipline, becomes a chain. And sometimes, truth, though bitter as medicine, is what saves both sides, father and daughter, giving and learning, wrong and repair. If you're still listening, maybe you've lived a version of this too, when love was misunderstood, when generosity was taken for granted, when you had to draw a painful boundary with someone you cared about. If so, let me tell you, you're not alone. Boundaries don't kill love. They protect it from distortion. I know, if you're still here, maybe you carry a wound, small but unhealed. Maybe a loved one hurt you, or maybe you had to walk away even while still caring. Just know this, you're not alone. Sometimes real love isn't about holding on. It's about learning to let go so both sides can breathe again. If this story touched you, tell me where you're from, and if you've ever learned a lesson in boundaries, share it in the comments below. Your words might help someone out there find the strength to stand back up. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please hit like, subscribe, and stay for the next journey. Thank you for giving your time and your heart to listen until the end. Sometimes, all it takes is one person who truly listens, and that alone can heal